Alright, so in this module we're going to go over a simple lighting setup, setting up render passes, tweaking the fume shader, rendering the sparks out, and finally slap comping them together to pass off to a compositor. So in our fume scene here we have 4 different fluids. Now you'll always have to decide in your scene whether to break these out into different renders separately, or since this is more or less one constant effect, whether to keep them all together. So the benefit of keeping the fluids together is they will blend together in 3D, not 2D, obviously, and light from the fluid tank will scatter into the other fluid and light that up. So since we've got a lot of fire here, I want the light from everything to illuminate all the other fluids as well. And so for this, we're going to keep everything together in one pass. Although if you did want to separate these out and still have the interactive lighting on the different fluids, it just adds to more render time. You could go out and separate each fluid separately, render it together as well, and separate them out individually with each alpha channel. But for this, we're going to keep it together. So firstly, I'm just going to tidy up our scene here. It's getting a little bit messy here, so I'm going to group all my fume containers. Call this fluids, and let's take all of our, let's see, particles and particle emitters. Let's group that, say particles, emitters. We will drag this down here, drag this into the particles emitters. There we go, so that's a little tidier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a basic lighting setup, and I'm going to add in a Arnold skydome light, and this is going to just create from an image or an HDR. We're going to give all the fluids a general ambient light from the world around it. So if we click on File here, go into our image that we have here, our sky. Let's open that up. And also, let's just mimic the sun here. We're going to set a key light for the sun direction here. And let's just make this a top-down. Let's create a directional light. And let's just face this down here. Okay, so now let's just head into our render settings here. And we'll set up a couple of changes real quick. Let's just render HD 720. In our sampling, we're going to turn off the indirect for now until we get to the next clip. And right now we're just going to set up basic lighting on the smoke. And let's just make sure that motion blur is off. And let's just go into our AOVs now. And the great thing about the later versions of Arnold is we have a couple of volume passes that we can add in. So we're going to go into built-in, and under volume, let's grab all these passes. So we're going to get the regular volume pass, the direct, and the indirect, which is going to be really useful, and the overall opacity. So let's go in and add these in. And now let's just go to our frame 40 in our camera here, and let's start setting up an IPR. And actually, let's just make sure before we start rendering that we have cast and receive shadows on our fluids. So if you click on your fluid and scroll down to under the rendering settings, let's go down to the smoke opacity tab, and let's just select on cast and receive shadows. Let's do that for all of our fluids. And just one thing to note, this is a little bit definitely quicker than what I had before selecting our fume tanks. I've reduced all these by 3. So in our fume 2 here container, before this was at 1, and this was we started making changes and it takes a lot longer, right? So I've just gone through and I've reduced all of our tanks to a value of 3. And so everything's a lot faster when we make these changes. So we've got cast and receive shadows. So now let's go in and take an IPR. So over this, we're going to use the Arnold render view renderer, and it's a lot more advanced than the traditional my IPR here. And one of the main reasons is because we get the render passes included. We can separate out and view them individually. So here we've got all our volume render passes, and we can view these individually. So that's really useful. So we're going to switch to our camera here. And I've got this rendering at test resolution of 75% of our 720p. So let's go ahead and take a render. Let's just start the IPR. There we have a render. So without any lighting, we can see a little bit of what's going on. So let's just start with our sky dome light. So let's increase the exposure, and let's just give it 1 or a value of 2. Let's start with 1. So the idea is that we're just going to give it some worldly ambient light from the world around it. And our directional light here is going to mimic the sun. So let's boost this up to a value of 5.5. And we can see just on the fly how fast it really is. And just kind of tweak until you personally like what you're achieving. So this is all kind of relative. So I think for me, I'm liking a value of about 5.5. And also I'm going to use the color temperature to be a bit more warmer as the sun. So I'm going to drop those down to about 5,000. Let's give it a little bit more of a yellow tinge. So there we go. That's a basic rendering setup, and we can see what's going on in our fluids here. And in the next clip, we'll go in and we'll tweak some of the color settings as well as the black body shading and the global illumination, which is going to look great. So this is our final render, and we'll see you in the next clip.